Bayview Podcast with hosts Andrew Clark and Chris Emery. This is designed to be a discussion on all things life and faith. We hope this serves as a weekly resource and encouragement to you.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Bayview Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, joined as always by I'm just going to go back to it, the Regal.
The Regal. I'm just going to embrace it.
Yeah,
I'm going to take
just
Regal
own it.
and roll.
Pastor Chris Emery, how are you?
I'm good, man. You seemed caught off guard that you had to say hello.
Yeah, I literally before we started recording, I felt like it'd been a minute since we sat here.
We had
chatted,
a week off. Yeah, we did. I mean, listeners, you didn't have a week off, but sometimes we get several episodes ahead, and we didn't record last week, and it's weird after 1 week. You kind of feel a little.
If you spent any time with us actually at church on a Sunday or watch us online, I do a lot of announcements with Rainey Lafreniere, who's on staff here, and we have this unspoken thing where we attempt to maybe throw each other off a little bit. I know you and him have a similar.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And half the time, he doesn't actually have to do anything to throw me off. I just have something I'm going to say, and then I get up there and I freeze. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense to say that. And so he thinks he wins, but it's just me in my own head.
You're sabotaging yourself.
And that's what I think that happened in this intro. So sabotaged.
Oh, well, hey, it's good to be back with you. We're kind of shifting gears over the last 8 weeks. We've been diving into the Beatitudes, doing a deeper dive, and there will be some other deep dives we do moving forward. But we also just love it when we get to have guests in the studio, an opportunity to just hear their voices and just learn about other people and hear their Jesus story. So this today, I almost said this morning, you set me up.
You're welcome.
Today, we are excited to have Colleen Schramm with us. How are you doing today?
Yes, I'm great, thank you.
Yeah.
I know we were talking about Chick-fil-A, though, so I'm starting to get hungry.
Yeah, it is. Like we're recording a little early. We're recording pre-lunch, so at some point, our producer, Brock, may have to edit out some of the gurgles of our stomachs or something. Or we should have just had Chick-fil-A here,
bro.
And eating nuggets and stuff. Why? Okay.
Yep.
We have to recalibrate.
Let's start
next
over.
time. Let's start over. We'll be back in 15 minutes. Can we be back? So, So Colleen, it's so good to have you here.
Thank you.
And for those of you that don't know Colleen, she is part of our church staff. She works in our Bayview Kids department and has just been an incredible addition. She's still newer. How long have you been in that position?
About 6 months. I'm the newest on staff, for sure. Yeah.
But, man, just such an instant, not just impact on the work you do, but I've just loved how you've just instantly become part of the tribe, just part of the fun and the vibe, and that's been really, really cool. And so, basically, we just want to use this time to get to know you, hear a little bit about your story, your journey individually. We want to, you can tell us about your family, and then certainly we want to talk about how did God get you to where you are now, and what's that meaning to you? So we can go back as far back as you want.
Okay.
You weren't born a Schramm.
No.
What was your maiden name?
It was Finn, Finn.
Oh, really? Colleen Finn.
Yes.
Finn to Schramm.
Finn to Schramm. And actually, fun fact, not many people called me Colleen until college. I grew up as Finn. That's just how they knew me. So I had to relearn my first name, Colleen. And then I went by Colleen in college, and then I, got married, and so it was an identity crisis for a while. Yeah.
Because I guess Finn doesn't feel like an adult name. You just messed up though, right?
Did I?
Yeah. Well, you know that from now on around here, it's going to be Finn.
Oh boy, it's going to take me back. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. See, the entire podcast was meant just for that.
Yeah.
What others meant for evil, God meant for good.
Yeah.
No. All right. So where was Colleen Finn? Where was Finn born and raised?
Yeah. So I was actually born in a Chicago suburb, but raised in Indiana, northern Indiana, Goshen to be exact. Really great place to grow up, honestly. I have nothing but good memories of, all the things that come with being in a somewhat rural town.
Yeah.
Grew up there. I have mom and dad, an older sister and older brother, so I was the baby. But the smartest of the three. So
Because no other babies of the family
yeah,
think that
not
at all, right?
No, I learned from all their mistakes. So I grew up in Goshen, and then I went to Indianapolis to attend Butler University
Very
for
cool.
school. Yeah, and majored in international business and marketing there. And I actually used my degree right after and dove into a career in global marketing. So
Oh, wow.
I went from Butler in the glory days when we were at the Final Four. I mean,
Yeah.
fantastic 4 years.
Before Coach Brad bolted for Boston.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, we had some awesome players at the time too. But yeah, and then I just kind of moved down the street after Butler and worked at a pharmaceutical company in town there in global marketing. So
Okay.
that's where I started my career. And I was there for about 6 years. In that time, Dan and I got married. He came back from Florida. He had moved to Florida briefly, but then,
Okay.
in our negotiations during talking about marriage, I brought him back to Indiana. So
did you guys meet in college?
we did.
Okay.
We met at Butler, but another fun fact, our parents, their houses in northern Indiana are 15 minutes away from each other.
Oh, no way.
So we grew up, in next door counties, but never knew each other until we met in college.
So what town did he grow up in?
Bremen.
Okay.
It's very small
Yeah.
and not
Okay.
as cool.
No.
But
Not as cool as Goshen.
Goshen, the booming metropolis.
I've been to Goshen many times.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of Goshen's quaint and
Yep.
sweet and nice. I don't know if I'd call it cool, but it sure is nice.
Yeah. It's
No,
nice.
No, it's all good.
Yeah.
I went to school in Indiana, so we, in playing soccer, Wesleyan, a smaller Christian college. That's Goshen College is another college, and
Mm-hmm.
so we been there many times.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
very cool.
Mm-hmm.
So why international business? What drew you to that?
Yeah. So I just grew up with a desire to understand and work with other cultures my whole life. We always had exchange students growing up in our home.
Very cool.
And I think that's kind of what sparked the interest of, there's more to this world than the bubble of my home and the bubble of the United States. So, I just had a love for understanding other people, other cultures, how they work, why they work. And so I just married that with marketing. And while I was in school, I studied abroad a few times. So I got some really cool exposure to the world that way too. But
That's cool.
so I then dove into international business, global marketing, and it was hard, like a good challenge to start your career running at such a big company. But I would say, like 6 years in, there came a time when Dan and I were talking about starting a family, and I just had a huge shift in my heart at that time to a desire to be at home with my future kids someday. And I had never had that desire before, so I knew that was God working. And so God started working in my heart then, and I was just deep in prayer, and something pretty big happened at the company. They were doing like early retirements, and they didn't have enough people retire, so they opened it up to other people. And it was a time when I knew, I was like, God, you need to show me a big sign. So God showed me a big sign. Like, I had the ability to walk away from a career like at a very happy spot, and start a family. And so we decided to prioritize Dan's career at that point, and we knew that it was time to shift and just me focus on a few things, understanding who I was and where my identity was rooted, not in the workplace, because I think I got to an unhealthy place there.
Okay.
So I think that this was God's answer of, I'm going to remove you from a place that you find too much of your identity.
Oh, wow.
So I, stepped back from that, and then it was a transition into motherhood. So, I would say that was one of the biggest prayers that was answered in my life, because I did feel like, I don't know what's next, but I'm ready to start a family. I don't know when that's going to happen. And so it was very clear. God's like, yeah, you're going to start a family, and you're going to figure out where your worth is rooted and your identity is rooted, because it's not in a job.
Wow.
So I feel like there was a lot of unpacking after I left there. And since then, for the past 5.5 years, I've been primarily at home with my kids. So,
Okay. So that all happened 5.5 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
About 5.5
Wow.
years ago. So, yeah, and now Denny is 5.5. Savannah is 3.5. And when we made the decision to prioritize Dan's career at that point, like, it was never working for me wasn't off the table.
Right.
But I was always going to prioritize being a mom first.
Sure.
So I would dabble in work over the past 4 or 5 years, just knowing that it needed to enhance or add to our family and not take away from it, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, so that's where that time in between and that transition happened. But the best thing that happened during that time is just my trust in Jesus and my my reprioritizing of my faith and understanding that I am going to be fed by the word more than fed by the money that I'm earning, if that makes sense. And just understanding too that, when I have failures, it's okay. And when I feel like sometimes being in a corporate atmosphere, you're in a pressure cooker and you feel like, oh, any failure you're going to implode. And I feel like that got to me. And so stepping away from a corporate atmosphere was exactly what I needed, but I didn't know that at the time. But God knew that. So, and I feel like I have a really healthy relationship with work now, if that makes sense. So,
yeah. So I think the whole identity thing, I'm glad you brought that up. That probably sparked the ears of most every listener, because I think that is a very universal struggle or battle or moment we all have to go through, because we do wrestle with that. Where is my identity? We know in our head my identity is in Christ as a believer, but it doesn't always mean that really infiltrates our heart and our feelings and our emotions and our priorities. So just maybe break that down a little bit more of like how was that for you? How did you find your way through that? What were maybe some of the struggles of that moment? Because that's a big shift from international business, global marketing. I mean, you strike me as somebody that is a take charge. I come in the office, I got this, and there's a lot of respect that comes with that. There's a lot of followership that comes with that. To I'm going to shift from this to I'm going to be a mom.
Yeah, and thank you for that. But that was the hardest year of my life, to be frank, of going from just a place where I'm like accomplishing a lot and I am going into a big building. I'm traveling and then to a year later being at home with a newborn, not really interacting with others, feeling like my biggest accomplishment of the day is like changing diapers. I really was hard on myself for that. And it took a while for me to realize that like God saw me in both scenarios, but he was speaking to me and I was listening more clearly as a mother of a newborn. And like when I would start engaging with people or talking to people, when you first say like, where are you from? What do you do? You first go to what you do for work, right? And I just felt crippled in a way that I was like, I don't even know who I am and how to respond to that, because I'm no longer that international business person. I'm just a mom. That's what I was telling myself. And so it took a long time for me to realize that the like my identity is not where I physically am every day. My identity needs to be found in my thoughts and beliefs and rooted in who I am as a person. And until I can figure that out, then I'm not going to be in a healthy place.
Yeah.
So I feel like that, God needed me to realize, like, you're no longer that business person because you're my child. And as my child who has children now, I want you to seek me first. And I want you to be confident in who you are in me as you raise these children. And that's the most powerful thing that could have been spoken to me during that time. And I even had, like, I'd run into people after leaving this big company, and they'd ask, what are you up to now? And at first I was a little bashful about it, about being just a stay-at-home mom. But I felt so much pride in that eventually that and I felt this feeling of just being blessed to be in that spot. And I had to change that in my mind for a while, because it was a choice that we made, following guidance from God in our marriage, what we wanted in our family. These were choices we made, you know, and I needed to be confident in those choices. And so eventually, like, it became a very easy thing for me to talk about in these settings, to be like, I get to stay home with my kids, and these years are short, and I want them to see me every day. And huge shift though. Never did I ever think I would be a stay-at-home mom and be like their primary caregiver. But it's been incredible, and I've learned more about me, and I've grown so much more in my faith by doing that than having the distraction of a hustle and bustle job. Not saying that, that's not for everyone. Being a stay-at-home mom isn't for everyone. Being in a hustle bustle job isn't for everyone.
Totally.
For me, it's what I needed to kind of set my life back on track. So,
that's so cool.
Yeah.
So it sounds like at some point on that journey, the word just was removed from what you do.
Yes.
So I heard a speaker years and years ago, I can't remember who it was, but he just did a great sermon of saying none of us should have that in our vocabulary if our identity is in him. So you're never just a stay-home mom.
Yeah.
You're never just retired. There's callings built into all of that. And I think that's such an important thing. And I have no doubt that there are some of our listeners that are probably right in the midst of that. They're probably right in the turmoil of this is what I know, this is what I feel. Were there any, and maybe not, but is there anything like practical resource or things that you remember, like, this was so helpful in helping me get through that journey?
Yeah, that's honestly finding a community of people in a similar life stage was so important for me. So moms groups or Bible studies that had other stay-at-home moms, just being able to also, talk with other believers who were in a similar life stage was exactly what I needed. I can't say that there was like one book that solved it or, one passage that woke me up, but I think just being around other people and feeling like, oh, they're doing great, I'm going to be okay, was huge. And I really, my family and my in-laws, they were so supportive of this decision too. So having family around that was so supportive of the path that we decided to take our family on was a godsend as well.
Good.
So,
No, I love that. I think that alone, finding community, people that can speak into your life, you can watch, learn from. I mean, we all need that, even no matter what we're going through. I think that's so important.
Yeah.
So.
Especially, I mean, we can just get so wrapped up in a title. Like, that's what I keep thinking of. It's just like, I remember being done at the former church I worked at, and then I became like a barista. And I felt like every person I knew that I interacted with, I had to be like, well, I used to do.
Yes.
Like, that was just part of my language. It was like, well, I'm doing this, but like I used to, and it I don't know, like there was just so much there. When you use the words like used to or just, you're removing the contentment that can be found with what you're actually doing. And I feel like we're so called to be content with where we're at, because we're following God's plan. If we're truly like seeking Him, then you can. That's where that whole idea of being content where you're at comes from. And I just remember so many different times when it was like, anytime I felt that angst of like, I'm not supposed to be doing this, is this right? Or like, I want what I had back, or whatever it was. Anytime I was uncontent, I was just reminded of like, oh, but I have so much more time with my kids in this moment to be a father. Or wow, I have all this freedom now to actually like pursue my wife at a deeper level. Or I'd have people come into my life who they're like, we just want to spend time with you for you. Like there was just, I don't know, he's just so good. God's so good at reminding us in those moments, as difficult it may be, or especially when we choose to step away or things like that. And to some, I'm sure there's some in the corporate world who's like, girl, what are you doing? Like this makes no sense. And but that's such a step of faith that it's a beautiful thing. Like it's a really special thing to step in that and to step into it with confidence, even if that confidence takes a moment to really become part of our diet, our language that we're using. But yeah, the title thing, that is such like it feels good. Even back to you saying like, oh, I was called Finn, then I was called Colleen. It's like, I think about college, I was called Clark. And then when people start calling me Andrew again, I'm just like, that's not who I am. Clark, I was so cool. And I was like, blah, blah, blah. I had so much tied to that. Man, what's in a name? I don't know.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
Well, I think that is encouragement. Hopefully, if you're listening, my hope is that that little portion, we're not done. We still got some more things to talk about with Clark and Finn, but that sounds like
Explorers.
That sounds like an '80s band, or no, it sounds like a Clark and Finn or something like the '70s band. I don't know, but to hear from someone who is on, and not that your journey's done, but you're on the other side of it. Like it sounds definitely like you're in a place where you are so fully embracing who God is calling you to be. And we all know how this goes. It is seasons. Like your kids aren't going to need a stay-home mom forever. I remember even with my wife, when our kids all finally went to school, she's kind of like, well, I don't want to sit home now. Like that's not, she wanted that too. She had that same similar journey, I would say, and she and I were in full agreement. Stay home mom. That's all right. We'll make sacrifices. We'll do what we have to do. But then all of a sudden they went to school. She's like, well, now what? Well, there's another shift. And I think that's what we all experience. I mean, maybe you're listening and you are new into retirement. And now you have a whole new identity, an identity that is like, my commute is to the kitchen and to the couch or something. I don't know. But reminding ourselves, God's never done. And God's never, he never dismisses you. It just, you continue to find your identity in Him through the shifting seasons. And there's just so much contentment in that, which is kind of a big deal for all of us, contentment. It's probably one of the more elusive things. But man, when you find it, there's something about it. There's peace. There's freedom. It's a special time. So, all right. So anyway, sorry. So you make that shift. You transition into being the blessing of being a home mom. Stay-at-home mom, raising the kids, and your kids are awesome. Your little girl just, I don't know, she's adorable little thing. She's like a cartoon character.
Oh yeah.
Like it's one of those ones you just. But all right. So in Traverse City, you moved here from Indianapolis.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
How'd that end up happening? How'd you get here?
Yeah. So that was another big answer to prayer. We were in Indianapolis. And this was pre-2020. We were already starting to talk about, where we saw ourselves long term, because at that point I had been in Indianapolis for about 14 years with school. And we had lived in a house that we'd fixed up, and it was very comfortable. We had all of our friends from school around us. We had family nearby. Some people might think of it as ideal. And it was wonderful, but we had a stirring in us that we might be too comfortable. And this is a great place to live, but it's not really where we could see ourselves raising our family. And that's not something that you ignore, like when you start to feel that way. So we started to really explore that. And Dan and I were in prayer over it. Like, what is it? Are we just supposed to move to like a different suburb, or are we supposed to move further? And we, 2020 happened, and my husband is an actuary, and his company went fully remote. And so that started to open doors that we didn't think would ever be open. And we really sat down and said, if we could live anywhere, where would we live? And my answer was Switzerland, but that didn't work out. So,
awesome.
So Traverse City was next.
Wow, Switzerland, Traverse City. That's an interesting list.
I call Traverse City the Switzerland of the of the Midwest. So it works for me. The hills and the lakes.
There you go.
So Dan, it was really, kind of led by Dan, the actual spot that we landed. We started to think maybe we would spend part-time up here, be those frustrating summer, infiltrators or whatever.
Yeah.
But we felt God saying, like, we started to go through the process of buying property or buying a house at the time. And with the mindset of it being part-time, nothing was working. And so we went back to the drawing board and we said, like, we see ourselves there. We don't know why, but we see ourselves in Traverse City. We have, we have family within a few hours, but we don't really know anyone. But we feel very strongly about being here full time. And when we made that shift and made the shift to truly relocating our lives and not just dabbling up here in the summers, doors started to open. We ended up at a house that was exactly where we were supposed to be, with neighbors we were supposed to meet, meeting friends we were supposed to meet, and ending up at a church that we felt like was instant home for us. And really within the first 6 months of us living here, we moved up here in 2022. Within the first 6 months, we both just felt like this felt more like home than we felt in Indianapolis for some reason.
Wow.
And that was God. I mean, because we felt so comfortable in Indianapolis, so it didn't make sense. But once we got here, there was just this like sense of, this is where you're supposed to be, and this is where I have you for reasons you don't know yet, but you're here, and your attention is on me. Our attention was on God more than ever too, and just an intentionality with our family. We have almost every meal together. We are just loving this phase of being together a lot, in a place that is, beautiful and inspiring, and with people that we love. So
that is so cool. And so now your husband Dan, who's an awesome dude, he works from home, remote, full time. Does he goes to Indianapolis from time to time still?
Yes, he goes about once a quarter.
Okay.
So they do have some offices there still, but it's the nature of the job. You don't really need to be in the office. Even when they're in the office, they're not really talking. So, so he goes in about once a quarter. But yes, so we might be some of those elusive people who are able to work remotely. We are it. And some people might not like us, but we're happy to be here. And happy that we're able to work. He's able to work remotely.
Well, if they don't like you, it's only because they're jealous. There's no good reason not to like you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Has it been a bit of a journey to make sure that Dan doesn't become pajama pants guy?
Yes.
Every day?
He has gotten like more and more facial hair, and just, clothing I've had to tweak a little bit when we go out of the house. Like, what should we wear? Kind of coach him on that. I try to get him to go to Bible study every Friday morning. Like,
he does.
Go,
Yeah, he's there.
please mingle. Yeah.
He's there.
He looked so comfortable in that unicorn onesie. One day though, like, it looked like, I was like, you
wear that.
You've worn that before.
Yeah, exactly. Comfort. Yeah.
I respect it.
That is so fun. So you're younger than I am by far. You both are younger than I am by far. But back in like maybe the 80s, there was this Michael Keaton movie called Mr. Mom. So if you could find it, go back and watch it. Only because the whole premise is he loses his job, so his wife goes back to work, so he's a stay-home dad, and he totally turns into like sloppy robe wearing, facial hair, into soap operas. It was comical. And back then it was just funny, but now it's like with all these stay home work remote people, it's kind of like, how many times is that happening now? How many people are like, I haven't showered in a week.
Yeah.
Why would I? What's the point? So I don't know. So good job keeping him on track.
Yes. Yeah. Church gets him out of the house. Like he'll leave the house on Sunday for church, and then he might not leave again till like Thursday.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah.
Well, especially in the winter, that makes sense. But we're coming into summertime. We're coming into better weather, so maybe more opportunity to get out. So you found us. How did you find Bayview Church then?
Yeah. So we were kind of church shopping around, and we went to a few different churches in the area, and our initial impression here was that there weren't many young families. Like that's what we came into, and we were like, we didn't really see many kids. Maybe it's not for us. And then we just had, God speaking to us saying like, well, yeah, there might not be a whole lot of young families there, but I want you to be a young family there. And so that's why we settled in. And I just remember when we started going, there were a few kids like in the preschool classrooms or like the Sunday school classrooms. And I was like, okay, well, they'll have, the kids will have some kids to mingle with. But yeah, it was a little bit of a tug. Like there are other churches with a lot of young families. Maybe we need to go there. But then we just felt very strongly about being a young family here. And it makes sense now to me of like why we were led here.
Yeah.
But,
and now joke's on you. Now we have too many kids for you to know what to do with. And
exactly.
That's your department, and it's stressful and wearing you out. So
exactly.
God's like, gotcha.
I know. Little did I know I would be helping to orchestrate like management of all the young families.
Yeah,
so
that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. Well, and it is, and I think that's a cool thing for you to even voice that because a lot of people church shop or feel led to maybe make a move, and sometimes I think we get caught up so much in the consumer part of it of what do they have that is what we want now, what can they do for us now, versus just asking, but what is God asking of us?
Yes.
And there's probably, well, not probably, there are numerous churches around us in our region here, our area here, that are smaller, that really have a lot to offer. But it's difficult because families come in like, oh, well, they don't have what we're looking for. Well, I love that you listen to the Lord, because maybe God's saying, no, stay there and be the one to bring that to this church. And that's where things happen. I mean, we 7 years ago, we did not have any young families. We barely had families. I mean, there was less than 100 people in this church. And so we needed God to bring some people like, you know what? This isn't what we wanted. We're going to be here to make it what it's supposed to be. And it's just cool that you and Dan felt that call, to come in and be part of that process as well. That's a big deal. That's what being the church is. It's not just going for what can I get out of it. It's how do we answer the call to be part of his church, whatever it looks like.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
So how do you feel children's ministry, I'm guessing is, global marketing to Bayview kids? Lateral move?
Yeah, yes. The budgets look a little different.
The budgets look a little different. I have no doubt about that.
But yeah, I and when Ollie kind of started to talk to me end of summer about there being a need to help grow the program and help take on some more work, to be honest, I went into that meeting thinking like I'm not cut out for this. This isn't for me. I don't really have the skill set or a background in education. And then, so in my mind, I was going to come out of that meeting and say no. Like that was my plan.
Yeah.
But then in that meeting and really talking to Ollie and understanding like what needed to happen with the kids program in the church, I just heard things that I do have skills for. Like I'm a very organized person, and I am pretty good at like simplifying complex information. So these are all things that I can apply to children's ministry. So I went home and I told Dan, I'm going to say yes. And he's like, that's a 180. But I really just felt that I had experienced so much joy seeing my own kids understand the grandeur of God and the the hope of Jesus, and seeing light bulbs go off for them has been extremely rewarding. And being able to do that on a bigger scale, I knew would be also very rewarding. So I did feel like I had qualities to contribute. You know, I might not have an education background, but I know how to talk to kids in a way that they'll get it. And I know how to create a spreadsheet like no other, you know, like
Bring
do
it
some
on.
curriculum planning.
Spreadsheet master.
Yes. So, and there were like other events and stuff that were going to pop up, and I was like, I can do those things. So even though, you know, I didn't think I was going to be able to do the job, like it became very clear, like I was going to be able to do the job. I just didn't have exactly what I envisioned a children's director needing, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's been really great. Ollie and I have had a really great partnership, and
Good.
I feel like we've been able to, I focus more on the preschool area and try to organize things as much as possible, and she focuses more on the elementary space. So I think we've settled into areas that make sense for us too.
Good. Well, you guys definitely are a complement to each other as well, and it's just cool to see how you've brought your skill set into this arena. And it's, you know, I mean, kind of what you're saying is like, isn't it kind of like the story repeated throughout the Bible over and over again? I mean, Moses, I'm not the guy. I don't have what you need. I don't have what it takes. I'm not a good talker. I mean, all the reasons, you know, and we often spend so much time telling God why he got it wrong. Really is what it is. So, hey, I'm not the right fit. But it's just, God's not asking that. He's not asking for you to have what it takes. He's just asking if you can take what you have. Oh, that's good. That'll preach. Write that down.
Yeah.
Copyright it. Trademark it. Done. Got it. You know, and that's just cool because God always has other plans, right? We say that around here from time to time.
Yes.
And it's just cool that, and all he's asking is for us to listen and be obedient.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I do feel lucky to be able to have these like pretty big moments in my life that I can point back to God on and just say like these huge shifts are because I had small steps of obedience. And it became bigger, but at the time I didn't know what my next step would be, but I continued to prayerfully consider what God was putting in front of me, whatever that little next step may be to get me to where I am now. So awesome. It feels like a big change, but over the course of 5 years making these decisions, it naturally did feel like the right next step. Yeah. So
that is good. That's super good. Well, I mean, your story is, to me, it's a story of just continued obedience. Yeah. Like you just keep saying yes. You know, it doesn't make sense or it doesn't fit what I thought, but you just keep saying yes. And there is something really beautifully simple about that, of how we follow Jesus, of just saying, okay, I'm just going to obey. I don't understand. I don't always like the way it feels. It wasn't what I've been preparing to do, but I'm going to say yes. And the other side of that is just living in this beautiful space of what we call living in his will. And that's a very churchy phrase, but it's very realistic in its description, that's all any of us want. We want to live right in that place, that bubble of like, okay, God has me where he wants me to be. Yeah. I don't know how I got here. I don't know where we're going next. And I may not even know why I'm here, but this is it. Yeah. And that's contentment. And that's beautiful. So, wow. Yeah. Well, I don't know. We are excited to have you here.
Thank you.
On a professional level, a personal level, we just love you. We just love just hanging out with you. You're cool. You're funny. You also pour into our families. I mean, Andrew has 2 children in your ministry. I have 2 grandkids in your ministry. Yes. And so even personally, we thank you for all you do for the families of Bayview and of the area here in Traverse City. Doing more than our Bayview Kids ministries are not babysitting ministries. They're discipleship ministries. Yeah. Teaching kids Jesus and how to follow him. And that's something really exciting to watch, and just proud to have you as part of that team.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, it's definitely an answer to prayer.
Awesome.
Mm.
Well, very cool. Well, hey, we want to thank you so much for being with us today on the Bayview Podcast. I just hope you've enjoyed hearing another cool life story, and we think there's so much power in the stories. We can talk a lot about what God wants to do, but stories tell the story of what God has done and is doing, and that's just a beautiful thing. And so, Colleen, thank you so much for being with us. Just glad to have you here. We'll have to have you back because, yeah,
All right.
you've got a lot of cool stories to tell. So anyway, if you have not done so, whatever platform you're listening on, make sure and go down to the bottom or top or wherever, click that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We're dropping new episodes every Wednesday, every week, and we just look forward to this time together with you. And so this is Chris, Clark, and Finn. Thank you for being with us today on the Bayview Podcast, and we'll see you next time around.